Greetings, everybody. It is your Brozo here, back again with another episode of Elevated Beings, and we have another elevated being here. I had the honor to see him lecture last night, and I must say, a year ago, from at the same spot almost, Bobby Kilindi taught here, and seeing this brother and the other brothers that came here last night. It was a great anniversary, you know what I'm saying? And this is Darren, the Baron, right? Yeah, man. And I like to have all my guests kind of tell who they are, what they do, etc., etc. So, you know, do your thing, brother.
Nice, man. Appreciate the opportunity to come share on your platform, bro. So yeah, my name's Darren Springer, also known as Darren the Baron. I wear many hats, as some people say, and I would also say, and it depends where I am, who I'm talking to, depends what hat I'm wearing. So just to share, I have a background in, my profession is horticulture, working with young people primarily. I used to start off working in creative arts, music, filmmaking, stuff. Just working with who they would call the hard to reach, which was primarily young black boys and girls from the communities that I live in that were struggling in school and education, may have found themselves kicked out of school or on the verge of going to prison or coming out of prison, who they call the hard to reach, but it was basically young people who looked like me, who I could engage in creative arts activities. I eventually led into teaching more around horticulture, food enterprise, working with these same young people, developing food growing projects in and around the community. And during that studying and teaching and learning myself, I was learning more and more about mushrooms and the world of mycology. So that was then a world that I went back to kind of study and learn more about. And the more I learned about it, the more I decided that's where my focus would lie. And I teach people how to cultivate mushrooms, and I teach about the indigenous usage of psychedelic mushrooms as well as other sacred plant medicines.
You know, it sounds like you have an accent. Are you from Decatur or are you from somewhere else?
Well, where I'm from, it's not an accent, it's the accent. Yeah,
I tell people all the time too. They don't understand.
Yeah, no, I get it, man. But yeah, I'm from the UK, man, London in particular. I'm the first generation born in the UK in my family lineage, as far as we are of African heritage by way of Barbados. And my mother came there as a young child, after my grandparents were supported in getting to the UK for a prosperous future for many of our families in the Caribbean at that time, who the British were colonizers of. So they invited a lot of our grandparents, that generation, to come to the UK to help rebuild this amazing place. So with that said, yeah, there was several migrations of our people coming to the UK, and I was one of those generations that were conceived there.
So your older folks came after World War II?
Yeah, all of that good stuff. Yeah. So they called it, they refer to it as the Windrush.
Yeah, Windrush.
Yeah. So you had all the colonizers from Jamaica, Dominica, Barbados, St. Lucia, wherever the British were. They were going to the former colonies and saying, we're trying to rebuild our place and space. The streets are paved with gold, and there's these amazing opportunities for you. And what happened was, when we came and arrived, there wasn't the open arms reception that we thought we was going to get. So we ended up being, in similar situations to most people of color that ended up being in places and spaces where they were not originally from. We were pretty much put at the bottom of this, the ladder, and had to work our way up. There were signs on the doors, blacks and dogs not welcome, that type of stuff. So yeah, that's what our people were dealing with. But they came over as skilled men and women, everything from carpenters and tradesmen, doctors and nurses, and they basically found themselves having to do kind of menial manual labor jobs just to make sure there was a roof over their head. So it was a lot more challenging in the UK on their arrival than they thought it was going to be.
A lot of people don't know that story.
Oh, they don't, man.
Yeah,
man.
People don't know that story. And I was just telling you about, like, when I lived over there, how I was kind of confused because I met a lot of British cats that said they were Jamaican, but they were British. You know what I'm saying? Some of the, you prime example. You know what I'm saying? Of that. It took me a while to understand it, but now, actually, if you just hear about the Windwash, you hear about that story, it makes perfect sense.
Yeah. Well, the reality is that I'm probably like my generation was the last to really, not the last, but really keen to claim that lineage back, that link back home, because our parents were from there. Our parents came and they still had that accent, they still had the swag from those places, but moving forward, you've got a generation now, Generation X that is, like my children and some of my friends had children earlier and they've got, their grandparents, and those kids coming up are not necessarily identifying with, the Caribbean, and they're like, I'm Black British. Like we've got to that point where we're claiming Black British, so it's slightly different. But just to share a story, as far as the impact that journey had on some of our family members, and it's close to home because it was my mother. She arrived in the UK when she was 10 years old, and she's even been writing and documenting this stuff as far as, that day, it was a Friday or a Saturday, that she was aware that she was going to be leaving home and coming to a new land, Great Britain, as a 10-year-old, and really wanting to be at home and stay at home. And then obviously making that 8 to 10 hour flight, as a 10-year-old on a plane, and then to arrive in a place where, like my mum said to this day, she thought the sun had disappeared, and she had never seen grey skies looking like that, and as a 10-year-old, your imagination can, run with you literally like, where's the sun? And, and then to be treated the way we were being treated, there was a lot of baggage that we picked up in making that, that transition from home to this newfound land.
Yeah. So, horticulture. What got you into that?
Oh man, so going back childhood, I think as many young people in the concrete jungle where I'm from, any opportunity we got to be outdoors and playing around in the local woods and forests and stuff like that, I was pretty much interested in that as a child, but we were just going over there free-spirited to the forest to go and light fires, take off branches and try and beat each other down with it, but it was just fun being out. So with that said, I know as a child I was interested in this, but as I grew, matured into my teenage years, it became less of a thing, less of an interest. Sports, girls, all those things became more of a priority. So what really done it for me was one, my involvement in the lifestyle choices that I was making as far as the food I was eating, and wanted to get more conscious around the food I was eating and where my food was coming from. And I was in that space and place, and at the same time I had the opportunity to go back home to Barbados, where my folks are from. And that was it, man. It was that trip to Barbados that done it for me. It was like the eye-opener, captivating thing that made me realize that food growing, farming, all of that good stuff was in my blood, was in my nature. And that's why I was always interested in it to some degree. I'd been disconnected from it. And it was like some of the smallest members in my family at that time, my little cousins who were in Barbados, who were of the age of, like 5, 6, 7 years old, who had their own land. They had land as a 5-year-old, 6-year-old, 7-year-old. They had land. It might have been 2 square meters, but they were growing a bit of spinach, a bit of this, a bit of that, and they knew so much about it, man. And I'm like, shit, I'm in my 30s and I ain't got a clue what you're talking about, And so with that said, it was like an inspiration to come back. When I got back to the UK, we went through a transition of moving home, and I had a garden space for the first time. So with that, I was like, yeah, let me try grow some food and stuff, and I wasn't successful. I went and hooked up with this kind of volunteer program that was like right at the edge of the forest, not far from where I live, my local forest. They had the 12-acre site. They were growing organic food, growing and supplying it to the local community. I just started volunteering there, man. And my children were actually homeschooled at that time. So we used to use that as our school. I was going back to learn horticulture. They will come be learning what I was learning. And I just picked up skills from there. But going back to, my roots, going back to the soil, that was like just a big part of my own journey of reconnecting with, where I come from.
So, do you think that was it kind of like, once you went back and learned how to do horticulture, do you think that it helped you later on being able to cultivate mushrooms better?
Definitely. So that was like the inspiration with where mushrooms came from. But in essence, what I was learning was, it was also therapeutic, man. Like I thought I was going there just to learn about food, growing how to grow strawberries and, tomatoes and kale, but I was actually realizing I was growing myself. Yeah. It was very, therapeutic, as I mentioned, and I felt the benefits of just being out in nature, being in the soil, turning it over, planting seeds and seeing them germinate and growing your own food that you would eventually eat that is really good and healthy for you. That it was life changing. But it was through the studying of horticulture where I became really passionate about mushrooms, because my favorite 2 areas of study was soil science and composting. Just really loved those units. and I found out the magic behind soil, the magic behind composting is mushrooms, or this thing called mycelium. So I was introduced to this mycelium, the role that it plays in nature, in the soil. It keeps everything functioning. Me and you wouldn't be here if it wasn't for fungi, mycelium, this mushroom organism in the soil that works like the internet, keeps everything, all the plants communicating, allows it to distribute food. You guys know about Uber Eats? And those that's it, it's Uber Eats for the plants, man, you know what I'm saying? So I'm like, how comes I'm learning about all of this when I'm in my 30s? You know, I didn't learn about it. Yeah, it's like, is that important? And I'm just finding out about it now by way of learning how to grow plants. But it's the thing. So those were the things that were blowing my mind that made me want to take this a step further and study even, you know, more into these subjects.
Okay. So last night, you had a slide that I said, that's all. And you had, it was kind of like your homage to your master teachers, right? Tell me, I'm going to ask you, so it was Bobby Hemmit, Dr.York, it was the brother, Rashid, Kilindi. Yeah, okay. Real, you know, as quick as you can, give me one story about how each of them, you know, tapped you, because I told you my story about Dr. York, you know, saying how somebody having that book back when I was 23, and I thought my brain cracked in half, you know, and I even told you about my experience with Bobby Hemmit, you know, when we were riding over here, but yeah, give me one on each and kind of, you know.
So let me do it in chronological order, man, how they came into my life. So I started with Runoko Rashidi, man. So I came into his work by way of, well, like many of us, when we first step into consciousness, we start in history class. You know, so we get into metaphysics and into other stuff, but for the most part, it's like just understanding who we are, where we came from. And for me, one of the best to ever do it is Runoko Rashidi, as far as documenting our story, you know. And it was, you know, we used to have a store in the UK where you go and get several stores, but one in particular, Moata Books, big up Sister Rosanna. So she had the hub, man. She had one of those black holes that when you go in there for your knowledge fix, you don't know if you're coming out alive or the same, you know, like you just never, what's going on. So it was through her and doing sessions in the back of the bookshop. It was like a basement environment, like you never know what was behind it. It felt like it was like, and I was new to the game as well, so it felt like I was, you know, on my knowledge fix and being able to go there. And if you remember, like TDK tapes, people remember audio tapes, man, and like, and, you know, going to a store and, you know, seeking out the Runoko Rashidi tapes and, you know, everything from, you know, the early presence of Africans in Asia, in Europe in particular. And that's what spurred me on, because the linkage, to give you an interesting linkage with it all, was, you know, he started introducing, you know, black presence in Europe. And I'm like, as you mentioned, we got Jamaicans, but Bajans, all in, and we're claiming, you know, I'm Jamaican, I'm from Barbados. And then it was like, hold on a minute, this land that we're on, we're always told, so, you know, go back to where you came from. So that's one of the popular lines, you know, it's actually the land where we came from in some cases, you know. And it was these, you know, these were the things, the early history class, you know, breakdowns that Runoko would give that, you know, kind of opened me up on what I now call my Gulliver's travels, man, on my Runoko Rashidi travels. Like I travel now, documenting and seeing, you know, our story all around the world. So he was a big inspiration for that. And just to kind of extend on that, because we know he made a transition just a few weeks ago now. I had the opportunity to actually work closely with him and invite him over to the UK. As well, when he was coming to Europe, he would just holler he was like a hustler as well, man. He'd holler all his links like, yo, I'm coming to your part of town, you need to organize something. He's like, okay, sir. You know what I'm saying? But I remember on several occasions him coming, you know, and I feel privileged now to have been his weed plug when he came to London, man. Like he was you know, I'm putting it out there now, but he was a smoker. And after all the sessions, he'd be like, yo, D, you know, I need to get that, you know what we need to do, man. And he was really a proud man, a family man, traveling around, and he inspired me a lot and gave me a lot of knowledge and wisdom about being involved in a movement, but at the same time finding the right balance of dealing with your family, man, and taking care of your loved ones. So yeah, he played a real big part and inspiration in my life, man.
Okay, so that's one.
All right, I'll try and keep it. All right, so who was next? In that order. So Kilindi's in there, at that stage. So I'm gonna have to do him twice if I want to do it in that order. So then Kilindi, and I'm still in the history class at that stage, and he first came in by way of teaching the African fighting sciences of Africa, which are the origins of martial arts. So that was groundbreaking for me. At that time, I'd stepped out of martial arts. I hadn't done it since I was, back in school, in my school period of times. But he was teaching and had these demonstrational videos. If you ever see the man, and he was just doing all the moves and stuff, and I'm watching it and I'm thinking, this comes like dancing more than fighting sciences. But what was really clear on these on these videos, remember VHSs? Yeah, on these videos. On these videos, he was talking about this dancing, which looked like dancing to me, is actually designed to kill. It's like, this is not a sport. When you're seeing all those other fighting sciences, they're sports, and this was designed to kill. And that was, again, just groundbreaking for me, really inspired me, because it tied in with Runoko Rashidi stuff, when he used to talk about the black presence in Asia, the Buddha and all these kind of things. And now you got this brother talking about the martial arts, and that just all kind of configured into a way where, that was just like another, another file, another book, another element or piece of arsenal, in the toolbox. So that's how Kilindi came into the frame, and that's pretty much where he stayed for a hot minute, as the martial arts guy, the master martial arts guy. And then moving forward, I would say then it was Malachi York, because in between that phase, I can see the brothers there on the crossroads, NOI, Nation of Islam, because that was the first organization, conscious organization that I became affiliated with by way of being inspired by Public Enemy, Ice Cube, and all those figures that were dropping, all the little Farrakhan, Khalid skits and the albums. And I'm like, who are these guys? Where are they getting this knowledge and information from, And like, what's the deal? So just like these brothers are standing on the corner here, bro, in where I was staying at that time, when I just left home in East London, the local, the mall, what you call the mall or the shopping centre, that's where the NOI will be out there. And I looked at them, I'm like, these are the guys that I'm seeing on them album covers and on the videos. This is the first time I'm seeing them in real life. I'm like, oh shit. So I just approached them, was like, yo, I want to go check out, what's going on. And Tutus, they were, where I started getting those foundations of knowledge and information. And then what happened was, I had a homie, after a period of time of going to their classes, there was a homie, he's like, yo, you see this, I'm gonna just keep it real, he's like, you see this NOI stuff, this Farrakhan, this Elijah Muhammad stuff? He goes, I've got something that's gonna blow you out, blow your mind, man. And he's like, yo, I've got these, it was a video at that time. Everybody from that era knows that time. The one where Doc's just walking around the land. He's walking around the land, and I'm just breaking down the knowledge. I know there's many of them, but they were just a notorious one that was just circulating, There's like a few of them, but there was just one in particular. And he goes in, man, and anybody who knows Doc, Holy Tabernacle Ministries, all of that good stuff. At that period of time, it was, what I give Doc credit for, like, ultimately, is that he made everything relevant to our story, where you could go out and have a semi-decent conversation with someone from several schools of thought. So I was coming from that Islamic perspective, the NOI, but like, he had that covered, but he had Judaism covered, he had Christianity covered, he had the occult covered, he had some alien reptilian shit covered. He was like, nah, you've gone above and beyond anything at that time that I'd come across in one space, where you'd have to go to multiple places and spaces to get that knowledge fix. So for me, it was just that, Doc was the man for beating people over the head with right knowledge. And, all those kind of books, like, 360 questions to ask. This man, it's like, he tooled me up and armed me up, in ways that, no one else could at that time. And, it was just the phenomenal, like me, take it how you want to, but for me, I put, Doc, the master teacher, and Master P, the rapper, in that league. Like, the way the marketing and all of that is just like, it was nothing I'd ever seen before, like it was, even I used to think the NOI brothers with the paper, and I'm like, right, these guys are hustling hard and, putting in work, but the way Doc had the system set up in a way where I could see the influences in the UK, it was amazing stuff, man, amazing stuff. So it was, multiple folded, how I was inspired by them and the works, but mainly the knowledge, man, that right knowledge. And last and definitely not least, and then I'll tap back into Kilindi, is Bobby Hemmit, man. So so I'm in the ATL, and I know he was this is what his stomping ground, or still is his stomping ground. And Bobby was the man for me. There was a period of time where what he done for me was redirected all of that energy and knowledge and information I was picking up, that I was putting outside of myself, and supported me in redirecting it back home. And he was the one, I say, although Doc done his thing, Bobby Hemmit was the one, as I said at that time, he really pulled the rug from beneath my feet. He pulled the rug from beneath my feet. You know, there were certain things like, you know, he would say things like, you know, God is a woman and she's a bitch. I'm like, what? you know, it was like, hold on a minute, where did that come from, you know? And then initially, you know, I had to deal with, you know, I'm coming from this right knowledge, I'm coming from Nation of Islam, and he was foul with it, you know, and, you know, he was spitting rum, and he was just very unorthodox. And he's like, I ain't no leader, don't be following me. And I come from particular places and spaces where it was about looking up to these leaders and putting them up, you know, putting them up on a pedestal. Yeah, man. So with that said, he kind of lightened the load as far as freeing me up and like creating your own shit from what you've learned. And I apply that to this day, man. He introduced me to the occult sciences and, you know, all of that type of knowledge that wasn't being broken down by many of the elder teachers of that period of time.
It's like on my journey, the stuff that I learned from African spirituality, it was before I started watching Bobby Hemmit, because that was later on in the day. I think I started watching Bobby hard like literally about 3 years ago, you know what I'm saying? So, you know, that was like, you know, but it's like the stuff he was saying then and teaching, you know, spitting the rum, you know, the libations, etc. All the stuff I learned, you know, previously in dealing through my travels, you know, so, and also he's a Sagittarius like me, like I was saying, you know what I'm saying? So I connected with him on like a whole new level. Like he was like, it was like an older version of me, kind of. You know what I'm saying? You know what I'm saying? So, okay, so we hear that. So now we got to get in the meat potatoes. That's what everybody wants to know. I'm about to start talking about now. How in the world did you get introduced to shrooms?
All right. So that's the bridge, man. Back to, you know, the cycle. So I'm on this journey, man. I'm on this journey of knowledge of self, you know, learning about who we are, what our story is. And Bobby was the one who really inspired me to be more applicable with the knowledge, like moving away from what we now call intellectual masturbation. I love all my other teachers, man, but it was more of a debate thing. And I was in that space. And it's like, well, with all this debating, bro, where's your growth? You know, how can you apply this knowledge that you've got about melanin, about, you know, all this new stuff, like how do you activate it? I'm learning about chakras and kundalini and all of this type of information and a serpent, you know, energy and ancient Kemet. And I'm like, well, how do you apply this outside of just reading it inside the books? And Bobby was the one who really came with the rituals and the rites and the ceremonial stuff and was like, yo, this is how, you know, this is how you deal with it. So on that journey, the more I was really delving into, well, what do I apply? It introduces you to like the spiritual practices that we were doing back home, which is commonly called voodoo, you know, voodoo, and, you know, it has various names in various places, but in principle, that's what we're talking about. And because that was so loaded, such a dark space, you know, a taboo subject, it wasn't something that we would commonly talk about or discuss or, you know, openly in that way. But Bobby was just, boom, putting all that stuff out there. So he mentioned a reference, a book called DMT, The Spirit Molecule. And it was this book written by Rick Strassman that was looking into DMT, which is a psychedelic, as well as a chemical that you find naturally inside the human body. And they was comparing these experiences to people who had near-death experiences. So people who taking these psychedelics were having what, you know, experiences, and people who had near-death experiences, and they're putting all that together and saying, yo, when people take these psychedelics, it comes like they're dying, you know, but they're able to come back to life, resurrect themselves, and share their experiences. So with that, it just, you know, the book was kind of blew my mind, but what was really inspiring about the book were the testimonies. So there was like 2 or 3 testimonies that are read inside the book. And they were basically these Europeans who had gone to these hospitals to do these trials. And during these trials where they had taken the DMT, because they had near-death experiences and they were then going to compare what the experiences were like, they were like, yo, these experiences were the most profound, powerful, life-changing experiences that I've had. These Europeans were saying things like, after partaking in these substances, which we know is kind of a spiritual, sacred, ceremonial process, and although we were inside a lab, basically, we were transported to these spiritual realms. And these Europeans were talking about, yo, man, I hooked up with these ancient Egyptian gods and goddesses, and they took me to different realms and dimensions. And I'm like, what? And, you know, I was naive to the point where I'm like, yo, how comes the gods, you know, the ancient ones are taking care of these Europeans? They're getting to go to these places and spaces. And I'm here reading these books, pouring libations. And, you know, I'm not, how vivid their experiences were. I was like, you know, what's the dealio? that was like a big inspiration, you know, reading that book by way of Bobby saying, yo, check it out. Because he was like, it's all to do with melanin. We got this melanin that connects with the DMT and, you know, we got this stuff naturally. But at the same time, I felt, I want to check out these plants, man. And that was where I started to take that research seriously, fast track slightly, you know, a few months later, I was confident enough to say, yo, before I dismiss this thing, I've got to have the experience. I've got to have the direct experience before I start saying, because initially I was like, nah, we're not meant to use these substances, you know. Everything the Most High has given us is inside of us, readily available. You know, you just tap with him. All of that external stuff is a distraction, you know. But with that said, when you really delve into what our ancestors were doing and still practice to this day, those sciences were, you know, a big part of it. So then, with that, I spoke to Bobby about it. I spoke to Wayne Chandler about it. Like, I'm really interested in this stuff. And they both directed me to Kilindi. That's why I big up them both, because many teachers want to hold, you know, like, you know, what I'm on is what I'm on, and I want you to be on what I'm on. And they were like, yo, basically, that's not my forte, but there's a brother based in Detroit. This is what he deals with. I guess you should check him out. And Rosanna, my UK plug, she suggested him as well. And I basically got in touch with him and was like, yo, man, I just had my first psychedelic experience. There's no one to really check in with. People are pointing me in your direction. And, you know, yeah, we got to started rapping, man, and made stuff happen. And I got to learn from him, share, exchange, you know, knowledge and wisdom, travel with him. Yeah, man, it was, yeah, a life-changing experience. But that's how it all began, man.
I remember back in the day, I remember watching the videos when Bobby Hemmit was like, there's a brother called Kilindi in Detroit, you know what I'm saying? He's martial arts, you know what I'm saying? I remember him, you know, like talking, and it's interesting now because it's all like connecting even for me. Because I met Baba Kilindi, you know, last year here at Sadiq's. Yeah, and I talked to him, I was building him, I told him about, you know, my book and everything, and, you know, we just talking about martial arts and stuff, and, you know, I'm just honored I was able to build with the brother before he transitioned.
Powerful brother, man.
Oh yeah.
Like, if for those who don't know, man, I always say you got to check out his work. Although he's not physically here, he's definitely still accessible, you know, in the entheogenic realms, but definitely on YouTube and Blog Talk Radio and all of that good stuff. And it's worth just checking out his works. I really do feel like many of the master teachers, but for me personally and for many others, he was like a Morpheus figure, man. Because after getting all that knowledge and wisdom by way of Doc, by way of Bobby and all that stuff, it was through these experiences that he was encouraging me and others to go on, these voyages that allowed us to hang with the gods rather than just read about them. You know, it was like, yo, you can go into these places and spaces, these realms, and actually interact with these beings where you no longer need to look up to them, and you know, they can be by your side, man. Yeah.
I got a real interesting question, I think, in my eyes at least, because, you know, what do you think influences more, what's the word I'm trying to say? More, some of the trips that have more of a, that are tougher, you know, and have more obstacles as opposed to other ones. You know, so sometimes, you know, you can have a trip and you're like, you know, you do see the lights, you're like, yeah, you know what I'm saying? And then sometimes, you know, you in the depths of hell and you got to get your way out of there. You know what I'm saying? So what do you think personally that influences that specific trip? Is something that you bring to it, or is it you think something that actually, you know, they actually? Yeah.
So what I feel is, you know, there's several angles I could approach it from, but I think ultimately if we go to what, you know, what these words mean, you know, when we're talking about psychedelics, entheogenics, those are like the two main terminologies used to describe these substances and the experience that you're going to have. So psychedelic means to manifest the psyche, to make the psyche clear. So what ultimately is sharing with me is that you go inside your psyche, inside your mind. That's where you're going, inside your mind. And the word entheogen means to generate the God or the divine within. So it's letting you know there's something divine inside of you that you can generate and activate. So what am I saying? I'm saying this to say that these tools or technologies allow you to go inside of yourself. And inside of yourself, it's not all good. If we're all honest about who we are as human beings, just as the human being that you think or know you are, you're not all good. You're good, bad, and ugly, as we make reference to. And like, so all of that is a part of your human experience. Plus it gives you access to above and beyond your human experience as well. So I'm saying all that to say that within the experiences, there's all things, man, 360 degrees. So within that, you're going to have challenging experiences. You've had challenging things happen in your life. So those things may occur in your experiences. There are challenges that you're yet to face, and it might give you a heads up or preparation on how you deal with those challenges. So the way I explain it is like the experience is like a pendulum. So it can, give you total blissness, and it can swing around to like major challenges, and as high as you swing in the blissness, you've got to swing back round into the dark side, man, into your shadow, into your Diablo, into the side of you that you might suppress, sweep under the rug, don't want to identify with, and it brings it up in a way in your mind that you can get. And sometimes you don't want to acknowledge that or accept that that's who you are, that's what's going on in your life, and you want to continue to suppress that. And that's then what many people call a bad trip, and other forms of bad trips, which we would ideally call challenging experiences, are people who are just not prepared for the good, the bad, and the ugly, because they've just been taught it's a journey of unicorns, bubbles, and rainbows and stuff. And no, like it might bring up some traumatic experiences that you've had, and it might even show you a version of yourself that you're in denial of. It might show you the way that you deal with your children that's inappropriate, and you think you're the best parent on planet Earth, and it's going to show you that you've got work to do in that area, and it can flip it on you in ways that, like it has done with me, in the way that I raise my decisions that I've made, in the way that I raise my children that I might have thought was best practice, and then the experience is going to put you in your child's position. So you become your child and see how you was in dealing with your child in a situation where you might have overreacted. And there was no need for you to deal with your child that way. But at the same time, this is the impact that it's had on your child. And you get to see how an arsehole you was being, and also the impact that it had on your child. And you come out of that experience and be like, whoa, now you don't want to do nothing but go hug your child. And, like.
It's tough, man. It's true, man. And it's like, I remember on this quote unquote bad trip I had, I was just like, it was different because my mindset was already at a point, in which, what it felt like? It felt like I was on a roller coaster. No. I was strapped in a bed, and I was strapped down with belts, like they do. Like maybe it was like this. People, like watching a movie screen, of like something you don't want to see, but you got to keep your eyes open and watch it. You know what I'm saying? And I came to that realization that exactly what you said, that it's not a bad trip, it's just the truth. So you gotta man up and take that shit. You can't be no punk and you can cry, you can do all that stuff. I think it's all a part of it, that's fine. But you can't escape it. Because once you're in there, you know what I'm saying?
It's more challenging through the experience, and then, because I've been there and done that, man, and then you come out of it like, but like, it's just like what Kilindi said, it's like, until you take mushrooms or, psychedelics and have an experience where you're like, I ain't doing that shit again, why the hell would you want to go through that for? It's like, you're not doing psychedelics properly, but then when you work through that and get through that, you may get towards some of the rewards that you get through going through those challenges, man. So, yeah, man.
Just in martial arts, like you it's blood, sweat, and tears, but you get that belt of that accomplishment, or you even get in a situation on the streets in which all you did paid off to cover your ass. That's a reward. You worked hard for that bad boy. You know what I'm saying? Yeah, that's heavy, man. It's like I tell people all the time. This is my little quote about psychedelics. It said, "If you ain't tripping, you tripping." Because I know one of my homeboys. It's a different perspective. You have a different outlook from the psychedelic realm, looking at other individuals that don't do it, because you can tell they're not checking themselves on a higher level. You know what I mean? I have a homeboy that he like, I said, man, you need to trip. And he was just like, nah, man, I heard the tripping's the ego killer. That's why you trip, you know what I'm saying? And but I've come to the realization also that you have to have a certain amount of, mental strength. You know what I mean? I think it should be for everybody, but I definitely think that people need to kind of work up to it. You know what I mean? Yeah.
People are like just fit for purpose, they could be doing something brand new and they just slide in and fit in, and you think they've been doing this their whole life, And then at the same time, some people need support and nurturing and, you know, to get themselves in the place and space. So it's, you know, it's always up for debate, you know, as far as the best approach and should I do it by myself? Should I do it with somebody? You know, what's going to happen? And, you know, what's it going to be like? And it's like, you got to be prepared to expect the unexpected, as they say. There's no set rule, there's no way, there's no guarantees. And that's what it leaves it really open and broad. So it does take some kind of courage to step into a place where every single time you got, like, it was crazy. It's like, all right, I'm staying in the other side of town and I've got to make my way over to Sadiq's, and I'm making my way here. After a period of time, I'm going to get familiar with it because, you know, I'm following that route. So it's what builds up your, you know, your confidence. You'll be like, yeah, I know, like, well, what is it, Campbellton Road? Yeah, I know that I've got to get here and, you know, this is where I'm going. But if every single time that I'm trying to get to Sadiq's, the route changes, you know, that it's a different environment, it's a different space. It's like every time you've got to kind of just pick up little bits that you can bring through to the next experience, because the next experience is basically very unique and going to be, there might be certain principles or themes that are consistent, but the experience itself is like you're always stepping into the unknown. You're forever infinitely stepping into this infinite unknownness. And that does take some courage, some, you know, it's like, it's not even a thing where you can say, yeah, I'm mapping this out and it's becoming easier and clearer. It does to some degree, but ultimately you go in more and you be like, oh shit, just after you thought you was getting your head around it or it's starting to make some kind of sense, it flips it on you again, 180 degrees.
You know, it's a trip because you and I are very similar in a few ways, but we're both, we travel, we've seen these places. See, while people, and I'm referring to physical places, you know what I'm saying? I mean, also, you know, dealing with the, you know, but you and I, you know, since we're talking, a lot of these places that people say in books, we've been there and seen things. I think we were talking about on the way over here. It's like, the more you travel, for me personally, the more I travel and see these places, the more the antiquity of the melanated race is becoming more into play. You know, when I, you know, especially, like we were talking about before, when I was in Teotihuacan, you know, and listened to the tour guides, they were saying, you know, we found it, the people found this place, you know, it was already here, it was covered, you know what I'm saying? It's like, okay, then when it was originally set up and who did it? And you know, there's only a certain type of people on this planet that would predate those other people. You know what I'm saying? You know what I'm saying? But the thing is, once you go see these places, you see, just like behind you, you see those pictures on the walls. You know what I'm saying? You've seen it. You went to Teotihuacan. You know the one that's, I know you've seen it, the one that's in Teotihuacan that's underneath the chamber, and it's got that jet black man holding the thing look like a jet pillar. Yeah. You know what I'm talking about? You know what I'm saying? And but it just differentiates between the other people. Sure. You know what I'm saying? But you know, you see that over and over again the more you travel around, man.
Totally. And I think that plays a big part in the experiences as well, the psychedelic experiences as a navigator, someone who travels, someone who's up for getting themselves up by themselves and going from point A to point B, you know, and that's that kind of navigational mindset that you need to have. But then just like you see, is like you'll learn so much just by going to these different places, learning about world culture is learning about your own culture. Your story is the world story. So you start finding them same little bits that you can pick up on the psychedelic voyages is no different from when you could go to Mexico and it could be predominantly this kind of ancient / Spanish culture that you see until you go to this one place and you'll see something totally different that blows your mind. And you're like, oh, these people are, you know, really dark skinned. They've got dark pigmentation. And, you know, and it'd be no different from maybe you go on a psychedelic voyage and you're like, these guys are really purple and I've never seen, you know, but it's like, yeah, you start to pick up, you know, certain principles in the physical journeys and navigations that you have that, you know, apply in these, you know, and in the empathetic realms as well.
During your lecture last night, you know, it's real interesting because you were talking about the, you know, Doc used to come the Tarites, the pygmies, the Tarites, you know, the short people, and you were saying that, like, you was basically saying that, you know, and tell me if I'm wrong, that pretty much that since they were the original ones, right? That whenever the people would go to realms, they would kind of meet with these people because they were the ones that could meet a level because they were the original beings here, correct? Is that right?
Yes, I was saying that, you know, in this cycle, this current cycle of what we call humanity, the oldest remains, the oldest humans that we're finding are the so-called small people, the so-called pygmies, the Twa, the Ta, the Aka, the Baka, the Babongo, the Mbuti that you find Central, Western Africa primarily, but also the so-called Bushmen of South Africa, the Khoisan or the Bushmen. These are the oldest, they have no birth records, and they say that their story that they're unearthly. They were here before Earth and all of that type of stuff.
So, question. In that regard, because going back, like you read the Holy Tablets and different books and stuff like that. So it seems like to me there was beings that evolved here through billions of years and beings that literally manifested here. Is that correct? I mean, so it's two separate. It's like two separate almost lineages of bloodlines, wouldn't it be?
And then we could say even multiple, even more. But like there's like common lineage, common lines, and even if we're talking about pigmented, melanated people, the stories are very broad as well, like the origins. So, you speak with certain groups and they got lineage, that we would line up with what we call Sirius today, for example. And then you've got groups who their lineage lines up with a place that we call Mars, within our solar system, as well as outside of our solar systems. And they all talk, not they all, but a handful of them talk about, being here pre-Earth, being part of Earth's story and getting to the point where we are now and doing what we're currently doing. And these were the first people to ever try psychedelics, ever to eat a mushroom. So they're interwoven into the mystery systems of the plants themselves because they are the plants. Some of them came from the plants and they connected with beings that were moving around or navigating the solar system, beyond the galaxy, all that type of stuff. That's what they say, That's
why they say that the Tamarans or the extraterrestrial beings would encounter these pygmies because they were eating the mushrooms and the plants, going on different levels and communicating with that way.
Got it, brother. That's it, man. That's the knowledge. That's so this goes back to like when we're talking about crafts and beings coming from other places. When you really get into it and into the plant technology, the mushrooms, and Doc spoke on this, man. You can turn yourself into a Merkaba, and you become the craft. You travel to these places and spaces interdimensionally, multidimensionally, and this is where you get the knowledge and wisdom, or why they refer to them as teacher plants, because you go and hang with the gods, who are the teachers, who teach us, who are the extraterrestrials, and all of that good stuff, man.
Literally, instead of like us thinking about you sitting down, just meditating, whatever the case may be, and these beings coming to them, they take a handful of mushrooms, right? They eat them. They go on their journey, and they meet with these beings, and they teach them everything. And then and on this planet, they materialize it and manifest it. Correct?
In the good old prayer, Roman Catholic prayer, Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come. Thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. And these are the principles: as above, so below; as within, so without. So we've seeing things in other places and spaces and downloading those files and then manifesting that here on Earth. So then I guess we saw pyramids on these experiences, just like those testimonies in the DMT Spirit Molecule book, where the European woman was saying, I got transported to ancient Egypt, or Egyptian type style symbology, pyramids and tekons and stuff we're seeing. And I guess the folks who partook in mushrooms tens of thousands of years ago saw similar symbology, and that's why they put it on the walls and, and carvings. And then, like my teacher Kilindi would explain, and this becomes a DVD player for you. This is a film script where then you take the technology, the mushrooms or the plant medicine, sit in front of this imagery, and the gods manifest themselves, or they come off the wall into your world, or vice versa. You take enough, you go into their worlds. So this is how the technology is being used by our ancestors for millenniums now, and that's how we hang with the gods.
Last night you cracked my skull, and the day after you done cracked it again.
We call it cracking the concrete skull, man. That's the breaking of the skull and allowing, the plant medicine to do its, its work.
All jokes aside, what you just said really, again, connected a lot of dots, because, the key really is the plant-based medicine that takes you there. You don't need a time machine. All you gotta do is take mushrooms.
Kilindi would always talk about, we're time travelers, man. Once you know what these technologies, because that's why we refer to it as technologies, and away from plant medicine, because it kind of puts it in a place and space where it's all to do with healing and, sorting out your trauma and anxiety and depression and stuff like that. But ultimately, they're tools for navigation. They're navigational tools, and that's what they were set up for. So it's our Wi-Fi, our Bluetooth, our personal hotspots. That technology that we're familiar with today, it was technology used in the same way that would allow us to communicate with even, well, with our ancestors, but even with the homies down a few blocks over. Just like you pick up the phone now, they would call the ganga or the priest or the shaman, you know, in other villages, in other regions, and they knew how to tap in. And yeah, there are remnants of the experience that developed and became sciences or practices that we do to this day, like meditation, yoga, martial arts being one of them. These were all techniques or technologies that came out of us utilizing the plant technology. So therefore, to reconnect with that, to do those things, you know, drumming, you know, all you know, everything from drumming, you know, the water drumming of the small people that they used to do. These were ways that would invoke those energies and archetypes. And so even the musical instruments were technologies to reconnect with those experiences or those places that we had been to. So through the drumming, through the dancing, you could get into trance or an altered state, you know, and these are all remnants of us partaking in these substances. And as they became more scarce, as they became more taboo, the more further we integrated with the West and totally got removed from these technologies, we had to find other ways of interacting with it. You know, they say even yoga comes out of this soma experience, and this is a psychoactive of some sort, whether it's mushrooms or another plant medicine. But, you know, the techniques and practices that we're doing are a way of reconnecting with that. Some people would say, you're cheating, because it's like you can do this in one night, in 8 hours, when you have the experience. And these master yogis, it takes them 40, 50, 60 years before you can attain to those levels. And again, we just see that they're complementary technologies, that when you do your yoga, you do your mushrooms. When you do your meditation, you do your mushrooms. They go hand in hand. One's not over the other, they're complementary. And that's kind of like the approach to doing your meditations, doing your yoga, doing your martial arts.
One's turn on and one's turn off, if you're not doing it. Yeah, man. Yo, that's very. So, what's the most you've ever done?
I don't often say, and I don't say it just because it gets into a space where people are, you know, not as educated. So if we're going to go there, then I've got to kind of put the foundations in place. I come from a school of thought where I was educated and brought into this by way of Baba Kilindi, and he's what's known as the high dose man, you know, on the circuit. So people who are not familiar with him and his work, that's not necessarily where you start in this process. So as far as how much I've taken, I'm into the double figures. Dosages, and that's something that I've worked towards, and I've realized supports me in putting enough fuel in the tank to get me to go where I need to get to. So with that said, you know, commonly, to just educate people who might be new to all of this, you know, it's kind of looked upon from a grammage perspective. So you can take anything under a gram, you know, is what's called like a microdosing type experience, where people use that for their anxiety, depression, and you can use it on a day-to-day experience, you know, day-to-day dosage, but it's such a low dosage that it's not going to have a psychoactive, psychedelic effect on you. You shouldn't feel anything whatsoever. The purpose of it is to support you with your day-to-day neurological pathways, reigniting that spark in yourself and allowing you to become in your everyday environment. But moving beyond that microdose, you move into what's known as the recreational dose, so anything from like 1 gram to 3 grams. And that's when you might hear about or seen, you know, kind of like people taking psychedelics, going to festivals, dancing, hugging trees, and, you know, being in that kind of joyful space, which I feel all of these dosages play their part. But then you get what's known as the heroic dose. That's in around the 5 gram dosage. So around 5 grams, they would say, coming by way of Terence McKenna and his school of thought, that when you take 5 grams, that's when the wheels really start to turn when it comes to the psychedelic experience. It's gonna start pushing you into those places and spaces, whether you want to go there or not. But what you find out is that it's a very unique experience, and everybody requires different dosages. It's like alcohol, like smoking. One homie can take a couple puffs and he's out of the game, and next homie just smoking joint back to back, and you think, what's going on? So you've got to feel yourself out within the experience. But anything from 5 grams and above is considered the heroic dose, and then moving into double figures, they call it the macro dosaging. And Kilindi, just to put you into the scale of things, before he made the transition, was talking about, you know, taking like 50 dry grams. So to go, if we're looking at that underground 5 gram being a heroic dose, Kilindi was in the school of thought of teaching around 50 grams, but that's not where we encourage anybody to start. It was like, again, a note where he was voyaging and going to, I guess he needed enough fuel in the tank. I'm guessing you know this place you know this concept because you're in a wider space than I am, even in the UK. So to get, I don't know, from Atlanta, I don't know if your car will require just one load of petrol in there to get you all the way over there. Is that possible? Yeah. All right, so you're gonna need to re-up a few times, to get over there, right? So it's about to get to certain places, you need enough fuel in the tank, and that's what it was mainly to do with, to put you in places and spaces where the lower dosages just are not gonna get you. So it depends on where you're trying to get to. It's not a race. It's not about, because that's where when people say, oh, how much have you taken? Then it looks like it's a race or more of a competitive thing. It's like, well, depending on where you're going, depends on the dosage that you require. Sometimes I don't need a higher dose because the work that I'm doing requires me to be more cognitive, I might be doing my physical practices, like some yoga, like some various body practices. So therefore, I'm not going to take a 20 gram dosage and trying to do that. I'll be doing some other type of work if I'm going into that space. So I'm saying all that to say that you start to feed it out, man, and you find what your dosage is and what you need to do, how much you need to take to do what you've got to do.
Makes perfect sense. Yeah, because me personally, it's kind of like after my revelations, I see, I calm down, I really see what, I start to really think about my thoughts and I have certain tasks that I was told to do, and I think me personally, and that's going along with what you're saying, it's like, after I complete those tasks, that's when I go into the next one. You feel me? You know what I'm saying? Once I meet, because I feel as though there's a certain expectation that they want from me. You know what I'm saying? If I don't meet that, I go back. It's like I'm almost destined to have another bad trip because I didn't.
Bro, so for me, the analogy that I use as well is like I think I mentioned it yesterday. The classic old, arcade games. Yeah. And just like. I always use that version. I used it like Shinobi. I don't know if you remember the game Shinobi. It was like a martial art ninja type game, because that was one of my favorite games back in the days. And like any of those classic games, what you would need to do is go through the various levels. So you get to level 1. I always remember, because everybody remembers level 1, because that's where we all start, And some people clock the game, but some people only get to level 3, level 4. There might be 7, 8, infinite levels on some of these games. But I'm saying all that to say that every level, you'll get to the end and there'll be a boss. And I remember Shinobi, and it'd be like the first time you're playing it, you got to get there, you don't even get to the end of the level. And after a few times of playing it, then you get to the end of the level, but then you got to fight the boss. When you get to the end, there's a boss there, and he comes through. And I remember that game where there's a technique you had to jump, just get it right in his pineal gland. It was like a cyclops. Then you had to get it in his pineal gland. You would jump. So it's all to do with timing and rhythm, and boom. And then once you've done it enough times, he would fall over, and then boom, you'll start on level 2, and it's the whole same cycle again. But defeating that boss at the end of the start is kind of like part of the challenge. And in these psychedelic experiences, I say it's a piece of your luggage that you drop. It's something that you carry with you that doesn't serve you well, that you can drop, which frees you up a bit. It's like one of your challenges in life. Maybe your ego, maybe your arrogance, like you're defeating your demons. These are the entities that live inside of you that don't serve you well. And by you getting to the end of that level, these expectations that these beings may have of you, like, well, you've got to fulfill this level 1 before you can get to level 2. And as long as you don't, if you remember in those games when I weren't completing level 1, game over. And then you could put money in again and click continue. And then you would need to go on, and that's how this thing works. This is how this thing works. Well, you got to keep having to do level 1, and until you fulfill that mission, that expectation they may have, until you go and apologize to your brother and sister, for taking their pizza when you was 7 years old, but it's traumatized them, like you got to go, you're like, shit, I got to go and deal with that, and until you deal with that, it's going to keep coming up in your experiences. You're like, I got to go and speak to my sibling, man, and have a conversation, and that's what it kind of inspires you to do.
Yeah. So, dealing ancestral trauma, especially, black folks, we have, 400 plus years of trauma, okay? I know that, like I was saying before, like I remember I used to have real bad anxiety, I remember when I used to play sports, like I'd run a touchdown, I'd just throw up, you know what I'm saying? That's how bad anxiety was, And even in martial arts and fighting, when I would spar and stuff, after I'd spar or whatever, I'd feel like I'd be like I couldn't breathe probably. Of course, I didn't know how to breathe, but also I knew that it was a part of anxiety, okay? So the more and more I partook, the less that anxiety was there altogether. What do you think that it is that they do? Is it something that they go in a work? Because I had a brother that took him, that had an experience, and he said when he was laying there, he could hear music and stuff and all this stuff. And he said he asked them what they were doing. He said they said they told him they work on the rest of his body. You know. So do you think that they literally, once they're in you, they physically go in and fix stuff? You think that's a possibility?
I'm really confident about that, but again, because it's a unique experience for each individual, it manifests differently for different folks. So there's some people that literally would say, you know, I have the experiences and I can see them working on me. You know, like that classic being abducted by aliens where you're just laying on a table and there's beings looking down over you, and like you having those type of experiences. I've had similar experiences to that where it's literally like you can see and feel them working on you, and your job is just to stay there, relax, and let them do their work. You know, you move beyond the space and place where, you know, is it good for me is what they're doing. You know, you got to, you know, accept it, but it's like either way, this is what's happening. And, you know, it then depends, I guess, how you feel at the end of it. You know, after this work that appears to be being done on you, what happens after it? And if you're saying that, you know, oh shit, I was anxious and I'm feeling less anxious after a period of time, then I would encourage that experience and allow them to do those things as and when things take place. So again, because it's not as physical work, like it's not literally somebody coming and giving you a massage or cutting you open, but it's literally that deep, that, you know, the depth of the work that's being done is like surgery, man. It's literally like, it literally feels like you've been taken, surgery is being done upon you.
So they literally can, because that's the way I feel. I feel as though whenever I did these things, they saw all the things that needed to be fixed, and it's like they continuously fix them. Yeah. And it's funny, you know, I say they, and you know.
Well, with that they, because it's like that they is you. Yeah. But that they that is you is all those aspects, those archetypes that exist inside of you. You know what I'm saying? Those, the healing deities on the tear, you know, like they all exist inside of you. So you're going inside your mind, inside your psyche, inside your spirit, call it what you want, where they exist. And it's like, you know, it's like the tarot deck, man. It's like any kind of divination. You know, throwing down the cowrie shells, you know, it's a tool for divination. So you're divining yourself and bringing out the archetypes that are going to support you in making the best decisions, the best plays in your life. You know, who better than yourself to give yourself advice?
Shrooms activate the they.
Yeah, oh yeah. You know, yeah,
so the they is me, and I'm introduced to them by Skull crack number 3.
Cool. Let's keep
cracking, man. Look, crack till we get to the pineal gland, right? That's what Bobby said, right? He said that pineal gland is, you know, he said your brain is the problem. The pineal gland, you know, is where it's at, right? You know? Man, shoot. This is an awesome experience, man. And last night was off the chain, you know what I'm saying? I'm sure that brother David, he recorded it, so I'm sure that whole lecture is gonna be on point. So I'm sure the world will be able to see that. And I got your your key, as you like to call it. You know what I'm saying? Yeah, I got your key. So I already downloaded the computer. So I'm gonna be listening to it and, you know, gaining more. Please tell. We're gonna wrap it up here. Please tell the world, you know, where they can find you. You know what I'm saying? All that good stuff, you know.
Oh, nice, man. So, yeah, once again, big up for the opportunity to be on the platform, man, and share, review, and build, you know, in the A-Town, you know. It's a pleasure, man, a pleasure to do this. So with that said, as I said, you can find me by way of just Googling Darren Springer or at Darren LeBaron. That's where you can find me on the social media platforms like Instagram and Facebook. The website is darrenlebaron.com, darrenspringer.com, either or you punch that in, you should be able to find what I do. But with that said, I've got a YouTube channel. I need to get more subscribers and all of that good stuff, because it's similar to what you're doing, bro. You know, I'm doing something where I'm trying to share this knowledge and information, but by way of people that look like you and I. you know, because when you talk about psychedelics, especially even in the current climate, you know, there's not many people that look like us that are having mature conversations about it, you know. We're still, the conversations around them are very immature to some degree because we've not been educated about this stuff. So, you know, on the YouTube platform, I've got everybody from Baba Kilindi, you know, and all of the students to people who are new to this, to those who are well experienced, talking about psychedelics and stuff, man. So for me, that's what, you know, the main thing that I'm trying to push out there and get people checking into or tapping into. So all of that and good stuff is the way you can access me, man. And I'm in the A-Town. I've got to big up, you know, the family over here, the Psychedelic Sundays, Brother Oyi, and all the other folks that, you know, came together to make this happen, man. Sadiq's, you know, Spot, all of that good stuff. I'm really appreciative that, you know, the community could come together to make something like this happen, man.
Man, I thank you again, you know what I'm saying? In all honesty, like, all the questions I was asking today have a lot of the, you crossed, you know, you connected a lot of dots, you know, on a lot of levels. And I appreciate that, man, because, you know, I'm gonna keep on taking my journey, you know, until I'm the man on planet Risk, you know. I'm trying to hang out, watch some TV on Risk, you know what I'm saying? Real talk, you know what I'm saying? I'm trying to hang out, you know, with, you know, Osiris and, you know, my folks, man, and see what, you know, what, because, you know, I've pretty, not in a negative sense, I've given up on, or I've definitely given up on the irreality that this world has shown us. You know what I'm saying? You know, I know it's not real, so, you know, I'm a bona fide space cadet and I will stay one that way. You know what I'm saying? yeah. But man, my brother, I'm so happy, man. This is a great, awesome experience, and, you know, peace and love, man. And, man. And y'all stay tuned. I'm gonna put this up, man. And, you know, please follow. I'll put your information up there, well, so they know how to subscribe to your page, you know, and we'll go from there.
Appreciate that, bro. Yeah, man, same to you, man. Keep up the good works, keep recording, documenting, and making sure we spread these spores, man.
Love you, brother.
Peace.
Yes, indeed.